It's my 72nd birthday today, and I just thought it might be nice to speak without a purpose, just not exactly ramble away, but just allow myself to say some things which otherwise I might not say. It's a good time to look back. 6 Jupiter cycles having been completed. It's quite a long journey. I've worked out that I've lived some 26,000 days or more, each one being full on. Every day is full on with something to learn. And at some point you get to understand perspective, I think, differently. A lot of my early life was governed by hormones which don't seem to control me quite so much now. And that's very, very releasing. And most of the problems I have to deal with my clients, as it were, relate to this sort of question people have to deal with, that we're drawn into 2 imperatives. The women tend to want to give birth, and men tend to want to establish themselves, and that's not subject to gender, but it's a tendency. And I've let go of a lot of that. I don't really have ambition anymore, and I don't really find relationship adds much to my life. I'm much happier alone usually, certainly much more peaceful alone, and I like that. I like being peaceful. I've discovered that my garden has actually helped me express myself more fully than I could possibly ever have imagined. And I've taken this half an acre, and it was a field, and I've built it into a rather eccentric and unique garden that's not mine, it's me. If I need to understand myself better, I just need to have a look at my garden and walk around it and see all the various expressions, the idiosyncratic expressions of my whims and fancies over the years, and my laziness and my absurd creativity and all of these things. And it's such a good metaphor for my life. I mean, my whole life story is exactly the same. And if I look back on the various things that grabbed my attention at different times with a passion that was unavoidable, and it was like a puppet master leading me, the marionette, through experiences that had no great value really in the long term, but at the time was so important. And the more I contemplate the matter, and the less I am pulled and pushed by hormones and imperatives, the clearer it becomes that that is all that there is, that we simply act out that which is disturbing us to the point where it's all out there and you can see it all the shadow, all the light, the conflicts and the harmonies, the music and the dance. It is just who I am, and discovering that has been the joy of my life, and I think that's true for us all. We really find tremendous joy in self-discovery, even when what we're discovering is not approved of by others, by society, and even actually by ourselves. The more we discover that, the more we get a sense of the uniqueness of our being and what choices we're making, and perhaps why we're making them, but usually why we're making them is the greatest mystery of all. I don't think why is a question that has an intelligent, meaningful, long-term, sustainable answer. I think that shifts with the wind, and I've become a lot clearer about that during the last couple of years when Uranus has been transiting over my Sun and Nadir and Mars, and squaring my Pluto, opposing my midheaven, semi-squaring my Chiron, sesquiquadrating my Chiron, semi-squaring my Jupiter. That's been quite an experience of awakening. I mean, Uranus brings awakening, and I've awakened into a knowledge that is very liberating indeed. So that's been a wonderful experience. And sometimes during that period, I've just had to remind myself that I'm going through an outer planet transit. It's going to be life-changing, whether I like it or not. And so knowing that what's coming to me may well appear problematic, I just remember that that was true 1,000 times before of things that, looking back, I dealt with one way or another. And the dealing with it was as easy as was my ability to detach myself from outcome. And that's the wonderful gift I have in my later years, is that I don't really care very much about what happens to me. I'm deeply in love with my home and my garden and the country that I live in and the people that I'm spending my life with at the moment. That's really, really important to me. But if that had to change, actually I know that I could find something else to express through. And that's all we're doing. That's all we ever do. We express who we are through our friendships and relationships and problems and challenges and ambitions. That's all we're doing. And most people seem to want to express all the problem sides of themselves, and I don't anymore. I really don't have problems anymore. I have things to deal with, situations and issues, and I just get on and deal with them. And some I can deal with easily, some are more of a challenge and so on, but they all get dealt with. And they end up as history, and you've got something else to deal with. And the idea of being anxious about the future just seems to be pointless and energetically draining, and I just don't have any anxiety about the future, even though I'm pretty convinced that we are approaching the end of what we know. I think the Great Awakening is imminent, as I think you must already have heard me say. And that just feels fine, pleasant, I'm sure, challenging, I'm sure. Just an intensification of what life is. It can't be anything else. It can't be beyond my realm of experience and capability of handling it, because that's the only way we ever are. That's the only formula that can ever exist. We can only ever get a reflection of who we are. So of course we can handle it. No need to worry about that. So I'm in this sort of lovely position where I'm not quite yet old, and I'm certainly not subject to the perils of youth and the stupidities of middle age and so on. It's quite a nice age to be, actually. My Capricorn ascendant is completely happy with the aging process. I think that's one of the lucky little things that I've learned. And what I think I've coming to understand is that the more I release myself into the flow of things, the easier it is, and the more joyful it is, and the ability that life has to make up my life experience is so much more rich and enjoyable and happy and easy than my own ability of mind to make it the way I think I might want it. Because thinking it might be nice, it's never valid. It never comes out the way I imagine it will be. It always comes out a little bit wrong, different, challenging for a while, and then pop into this blessing that I could not possibly have envisioned, really, because the horizon of my vision is not the eventual horizon. As soon as you reach any horizon, you see another and another indefinitely throughout eternity. And coming to understand that is an article of faith. And this, of course, is the major blessing of all blessings, is faith. So once you understand that faith is a decision, a choice, it's not a gift. It's not a reward. It's a choice of going left or right at the crossroads. And some people want there to be problems to overcome and to have anxieties to concern their mind and so on. And I actually don't. I learned quite some years and years ago that I don't handle stress very well. And therefore, I don't allow anything into my life that's going to be stressful. If there's something stressful that comes up, I deal with it immediately so that then I can relax again. And that simple realization that I can't handle stress was very liberating. And of course, society is based on the fact that those people that do handle stress are rewarded in societal terms with things that I actually don't want, like recognition and position and lots of money and titles and things like that. I just don't find any appetite for those things. And that's great. I think I did in a very big way. I've been very ambitious and rather rich at one point and so on. And I found I had to protect my wealth and guard it against loss or something. And that guarding it was too demanding for me. That created stress, and therefore I had to ditch that and let go of everything that I had. And that includes money and title and positions and kudos and all those things. I had them at one point, and it was a tremendous achievement, I think, actually, for me to let go of all of that. That was one of the best things I've ever done. And another thing I think I managed to intuitively get that's not obvious, I got that if I'm in the right place, doing the right thing, then I'm at peace. That seems to be intuitively obvious, that there is a place for me, a situation, a group of people, a task, a location, all of that. There is a place for me, and it's a good fit. So where I find myself at the end of my restlessness, the people around me at that time, everything I'm doing, wants me to be there. So there's a really good fit between what I want and what the external world wants of me. And again, that's intuitively clear. How could it be otherwise? And until such time as I found that, I continued looking. And I didn't stop looking until the feeling of the need to look further left me. So I was restless most of my life. And I lived some 30 years on the road, effectively. I didn't have a home in all that time, because I kept on looking for a place where I didn't want to move anymore. And I've settled in Kerry, the southwestern corner of Ireland, and I don't want to leave the county. I'm very reluctant even to move to the county of Cork for a day trip. I really love it here, and there's an alignment here. Everything I've kind of felt I was going to do with my life is now happening. So I found my place. But I don't mean to be crowing about this. I don't want to appear arrogant in this. I just want to reassure people, really, that at least for me, that plan, that vision, that realization that there is a place, that's true. That's true for me. And I think it's a general truth that I'm lucky enough to have discovered. And a lot of people really don't trust their intuition. A lot of people know that this is true, that there is a place, and you're going to feel happy when you found that place. And that's a metaphor. It might be geographical. It certainly was for me. But it could be a person. It could be a job. It could be just a situation. It also could be a place in your mind and in your heart, just a way of being. There is such a place. And when you find it, then everything just becomes so obvious and so easy. And it's actually ever so close to where you are now. It's just a little sidestep. It's just a shift of perception. It's just a few difficult decisions away. And there it is, And those decisions are very often decisions of perception. You can choose to perceive things the way you want them to be, not the way you're afraid they might be. You can turn passion into anger, if that's your way of things, or you can turn passion into an observation of somebody just experiencing passion and not get engaged in it. And the choice between those two is a choice between unhappiness and happiness. It's a perceptual shift. And I kind of train myself to perceive things optimistically. That's an article of faith. In any moment, you can read the situation to your advantage or against you. And I've trained myself to be optimistic in every situation. And that was a very liberating experience. I'm quite excited about the approach of the Great Awakening, what other people might call Armageddon if they've got that negative taste of life. I think we're on the threshold of such a magnificent boost of consciousness collectively. And this is not just my intuition. This is checked out by a lot of other people. Now, of course, those are the people I'm attracting, so I'm going to be self-validating that. I've got an inner algorithm that gets me, like Facebook and so on, to see what I want to see. So what I want to see is being seen as a number of people, a very large number of people, having the same kind of feeling that I've got, that actually the Great Awakening is upon us, that we're moving faster, there's an acceleration of time, things are happening much more quickly, things of consequence. Synchronicity is occurring much more widely, synergy is occurring much more widely. Things are easier and quicker and magical, more and more and more for various people in my life, most of them. And those are the people I want to be with, so it happens more and more and more. And as it happens with more people, so it gets more intense and faster and so on. And it just seems like we're on the verge of the most glorious experience known to humanity, the like of which is not recorded in human history. And it's just, wow. I mean, it's such a privilege to be a part of what's happening now. And yet, I'm not without compassion for those people that really haven't yet done that sidestep into this quantum reality, this parallel universe, just as a sidestep away from the troubled life that they're living. And I just want to nudge people just to imagine what you would want in your life if you could have it the way things are good for you, that everything's fine. What would you do then? And as soon as you get people to imagine that, magic occurs. That's what imagination does. It creates magic. And so if people can imagine things working fine and everything being hunky-dory and the Great Awakening applying to you and everyone you love, so that whatever does happen, and I don't pretend to have any real sense of that, I've got a model for it for my own use that I'm prepared to share with people, that we just basically wake up one day and we find that we've been dreaming this world of conflict. And those people that like conflict will wake up and be really pleased not to have us around anymore, who keep on reminding them about God and faith and stuff that they don't really like to hear of. So I think everybody's going to be all right with it. But I think as we approach that time, there will be an increased threat in the air for you to choose not to give your attention to. And it won't be new. Every day of my life, the news has tried to persuade me to believe in nuclear war and the threat of Armageddon and nasty people controlling things and me having to pay taxes I couldn't afford and be hungry and under stress and have to work as if I was a slave every day of my life. 26,000 of them and more. But it just didn't stick on me. There isn't anywhere on me anymore where that kind of stuff can find any traction. There's no purchase So it can't stick, and therefore it won't seep into my being. But if you exult in the problems in life and in the problems in your personal circumstances and whom to blame for your difficult feelings and so on, then that gives a sticky place for all the shit to come and cover you. And that's where the sidestep comes in. Just get out of the way of all that nonsense. It's been around since history, since the beginning of history. You don't get history books written on the basis that he loved her and they got married and had babies and were happily ever after. That's no story. There's no storyline in that. We wouldn't watch that in a movie. We watch our entertainment as something's wrong, then we fix it, and then something's right. That's the storyline. Whatever the story is you're watching, that's the storyline. And that's what gives us our entertainment. Without that, we wouldn't have the wherewithal to process the unconscious side of the ego. The ego's job necessarily is to promote the shadow. Where there is light, there is shadow. Where there is the soul, there is the ego, and they're bound to disagree. And they have this little tussle about who's going to get to make a decision next. And one of the little things I learned at some point was, actually I didn't ever learn it. I knew this from the beginning, that I'm the way I am because that's the way I am. It's a tautology. And I am somebody who occasionally likes to drink too much. And I have a smoke sometimes, and I'm lazy sometimes, and I get a bit irritable sometimes, and so on. And that's all right. There's nothing wrong with any of that. And I'm also a man who loves to pray and to dance and to be affectionate and appreciative and all the light things and to have faith and believe in God. I like that too. And I actually find myself to be so very much richer to have both of those shades of grey within my being. And I've met people who are lost in the shadow and they don't think that there's anything wrong in being cruel and beating people at everything and having more money than others, even if they're poor and starving even. There are people that think that and they don't have any sense of compassion and sharing. I don't really go along with those. They don't make me feel comfortable or joyful. But it is equally true to say that I know quite a lot of people that think that the only goodness in life is a spiritual way of being, and they don't approve of the things that I enjoy, like alcohol and the occasional smoke. And I don't like them either. They're pompous and they're locked up in their ivory towers according to my sense of things. And I don't judge them, either of them actually. I don't judge a spiritual teacher any better or worse than a murderer, to be honest. The blending of light and shadow is the mystery. In fact, a deeper mystery even than that is to move above those two things and not notice that one is light and the other is shadow, not to give them those names. If you do whatever you do in the moment, spontaneously and in the alignment of the self, the physical self, the animal self, the heart-centered self, and the spiritual self, if you align those three things, not necessarily in every moment, that's a bit of a challenge, but again and again, at least every day, and most of the time, and you live like that, then it kind of all works out. I wanted a physical body. That's why I incarnated. And when I've got a physical body, then I'm going to want to indulge pleasures a little bit. And for me to perhaps even become a mystic or an ascetic and to go beyond that level of indulgence in physicality, there would be an aspect of that way of life which would be indulgent, would be egocentric. Even if it's only pride, that you don't have any pride. I had a guide once whose commitment to the way of humility was something to admire. He was an impeccably behaved man who really wanted to teach the way of humility. But the truth is, I think, it was an aspiration for him. He wasn't really a humble man. He was aware of himself as better than others. He didn't embrace me into his life as somebody who has something to teach him, somebody whose way of being was equal to his. He noticed that I wasn't at his level. And yeah, I felt that was not exactly hypocritical, but it closed down an area of development within myself that I wanted opened up. I felt diminished by that attention because he was proclaiming himself to be further along, better by his behaviour. It was difficult for me. And I don't like these spiritual teachers that behave like that. They don't seem to have got that our job here, because we've incarnated, includes allowing the ego full expression in the material world, and the spiritual self, the soul, to allow itself full expression in the spiritual realm. Much more difficult because we've got a physical body, but both of those sides expressed, and neither attracting attachment. So to be above the differences, the distinguishing features of either of those two realms of being is what I hold to be the highest spiritual attainment. And it's almost unreachable for most of us, but we can get closer to it. And that's the thing. Movement is the thing. Getting closer to your aspirations and having principles that help you do that and sticking to them. Don't stick to your principles when it's comfortable and then break them when it's a challenge. That's not what they're for. They're to strengthen your resolve during the challenges. So I live by a principle or a series of principles, and I stick to them, and I take the consequences of being stubborn about my principles. And that carries me through the hard times. I do what my principles tell me to do and just allow the consequences to unfold. Surrender to that. And that seems to work for me quite well. So that's my life experience thus far. And at 72, you might sort of think, well done, James. Good job, well done. That's not how I feel at all. It's, okay, I've had 72 years of preliminary training for what's ready now to occur, and I better get on with it because I haven't got as long left as I once had. I better do the necessary. And my vision for my whole life lies in front of me. My best work is yet to be done. And I hope that's the case for a good while yet. I've got a lot I'd like to do. And it's not really an ambition. It's not exactly a bucket list either. It's just, I want to finish off what I can. I want to make the best. My garden, which is wonderful, could be more so. And I want to make it perfect, knowing that I can't. And my writing and my videos and my work and my job as a counsellor and so on, I'd like to be a bit better. I'd like to perfect it. And not to the level of perfection. I just doing the best I can. And that whole thing of doing the best I can never, ever leaves us. We don't ever get to the end of that. So I want to be the best 72-year-old that I can be. And as it approaches my unknown date of death, I want to die well. I want to remain excited about what's next. Even when I'm breathing out my last breath, I want to be excited about the journey that follows, and to die as well as I can, and to complete everything that needs to be completed neatly and tidily, and so job well done, you know, and look forward to the next chapter in this eternal game that each of us plays. So there we go. Happy birthday to me. Thanks very much for listening and supporting me in my video work and so on. Thank you. Bye-bye.